Emily Bryant appeared to have it all: a thriving career, a devoted fiance, and a supportive circle of friends. But on a chilly autumn evening, she vanished without a trace, leaving behind a perplexing mystery that continues to haunt everyone who knew her. Her car was discovered abandoned on a remote stretch of highway, her phone resting on the seat, and a single, ominous note that read, "It wasn't me." What unfolded next was a tangle of unanswered questions, unsettling coincidences, and a chilling secret buried in the shadows, one that may have ultimately sealed Emily's fate. Emily Bryant's life was the kind that inspired envy: a promising marketing career, a charming fiancé in Tom Walker, and a circle of friends who adored her. She was the woman who seemed to have it all together, her Instagram filled with snapshots of happy moments, radiant smiles, and captions brimming with positivity. But behind the glossy facade, Emily's perfect life was beginning to crack in ways no one could have foreseen. Subtle at first, her behavior began to shift. Friends noticed how she started arriving late to gatherings. Her once infectious energy dimmed into quiet unease. She seemed distracted, her eyes darting to unseen corners of rooms, as though someone or something was watching. She avoided questions with vague replies and nervous laughs, and at times, her words carried an unsettling weight, like the time she muttered, "Some things are better left buried." In the weeks leading up to her disappearance, Emily's habits grew more erratic. She canceled plans without explanation, skipped important meetings at work, and seemed to fade from the social scene entirely. Tom, usually patient and supportive, admitted he was growing frustrated, especially when Emily refused to tell him what was wrong. He recalled nights when he found her sitting alone in the dark, clutching her phone as if expecting a call she dreaded answering. When he pressed her, she would simply shake her head and whisper, "You wouldn't understand." Her coworkers noticed changes too: missed deadlines, trembling hands during presentations, and a disconcerting habit of staring blankly into space as if lost in some private horror. Then came the incidents that her friends and family couldn't ignore. Emily confided to a close friend that she felt like she was being followed, her voice hushed and trembling. She described shadowy figures she thought she'd seen from the corner of her eye, only for them to vanish when she turned. One night, while driving home, she called Tom in tears, saying she was sure a car had been tailing her. By the time he convinced her to pull over and wait for him, the car was gone, and Emily brushed it off, blaming her overactive imagination. But the unease lingered. Emily started locking her doors obsessively, double-checking every window before bed, and keeping her phone close at all times, yet she never explained why. On her final day, Emily left work early, telling her boss she had a personal emergency to attend to. Security cameras captured her walking to her car, her head down and pace hurried, glancing back over her shoulder more than once. Later that evening, she called Tom with an uncharacteristic edge in her voice. She told him she needed space to clear her head, her words heavy with something unspoken. He tried to press her, but she ended the call abruptly, saying, "You'll understand soon." That was the last anyone heard from her. Hours later, her car would be found abandoned, the keys still in the ignition, her phone on the seat, and a single note scrawled in her handwriting: "It wasn't me." The woman who seemed to have it all had disappeared, leaving behind a chilling mystery and a darkness that hinted her perfect life had been anything but. Emily's car was discovered 2 days after she vanished, abandoned on a remote stretch of Highway 47, a place she had no reason to be. The scene was eerily pristine, as if deliberately staged to create more questions than answers. The keys were in the ignition, the doors unlocked, and her phone rested neatly on the passenger seat. Inside the car, investigators found her purse, untouched, and a single sheet of paper folded neatly in half. The message on it, written in her handwriting, read, "It wasn't me." Those 3 cryptic words sent chills through everyone who saw them. Was it a confession, a warning, or a desperate plea for help? The discovery triggered a massive search, with drones, helicopters, and K9 units combing the dense woods surrounding the highway. But there was no trace of Emily. Surveillance footage from a gas station 3 miles away showed her filling up her car that evening. She looked calm but kept glancing over her shoulder, her unease palpable even in the grainy footage. She paid in cash, something she rarely did, and left quickly, as if she couldn't shake the feeling of being followed. The investigation only deepened the mystery. Emily had no known connection to the area where her car was found, and there were no reports of some suspicious activity nearby that night. The note became the focal point, leading to a frenzy of speculation. Was it a clue left by Emily, or had someone planted it to mislead investigators? Friends and family were interviewed repeatedly, but no one could make sense of it. Tom was distraught, pleading with the media for information and posting daily updates on social media. As days turned into weeks, rumors began to swirl. Some believed Emily had staged her own disappearance, citing the note and her recent behavior. Others were convinced she'd been abducted, the victim of a predator who had meticulously planned every step. A few even whispered about the supernatural, pointing to the unexplained circumstances surrounding her disappearance. The lack of evidence was maddening. Search teams found no footprints, no discarded belongings, no sign of a struggle. Nothing to indicate what had happened after she left her car. It was as if she had stepped out into the night and vanished into thin air. The more investigators dug, the stranger the case became, and every new detail seemed only to deepen the darkness surrounding her disappearance. As the investigation into Emily's disappearance intensified, cracks began to appear in the image of her perfect life. Financial records revealed that, days before she vanished, Emily had withdrawn $10,000 in cash from her bank account, an amount she hadn't mentioned to anyone. This was startling enough, but the real bombshell came when police searched her apartment and uncovered a burner phone hidden in a shoebox in her closet. The phone contained a series of chilling text messages from an unknown number. The messages ranged from cryptic warnings to outright threats. "You can't run from this. It's only a matter of time. I know what you did." Investigators now had more questions than answers. What had Emily done that someone would threaten her so aggressively? And why hadn't she gone to the police for help? Her fiancé Tom became a person of interest when inconsistencies in his alibi came to light. He admitted they had been fighting in the weeks before her disappearance, but he claimed the arguments were about mundane relationship issues, nothing that would explain her erratic behavior. However, when pressed, he let slip that Emily had been hiding something and refused to tell him what it was. Friends corroborated this, recalling times when Emily seemed burdened by a secret she couldn't share. Then there was Lisa, Emily's co-worker, who revealed that Emily had confided in her about something deeply unsettling. Months earlier, Emily had said, "If anyone ever found out about what I did, my life would be over." Lisa assumed it was a dramatic overstatement, but in hindsight, those words carried a chilling significance. As investigators pieced together the fragments of Emily's life, they stumbled upon another shocking revelation. Emily had once been questioned in connection with a hit-and-run accident during her college years. The case had been closed due to lack of evidence, but it raised suspicions that perhaps her past was catching up with her. The pressure mounted, and the investigation took on a more sinister tone. Was Emily the victim? Or had she been running from the consequences of something she'd done long ago? Months passed without any sign of Emily, and hope began to fade, until a private investigator hired by her family uncovered a connection that sent shivers through everyone involved. 12 years earlier, in a different state, a woman named Rachel Ellis had been murdered under mysterious circumstances. What made the case hauntingly relevant was an eerie coincidence. Details of Rachel's death mirrored a fictional story Emily had written in college, a story she had shared with only a handful of classmates. Investigators now had to confront the possibility that Emily wasn't just running from a stalker or fleeing her past. She might have been involved in something far darker. The connection to Rachel's case wasn't the only thread pulling investigators deeper. Emily had lived in 3 towns during the past decade, and in each, a woman had gone missing under circumstances that were strikingly similar to her own. While nothing directly tied Emily to the disappearances, the pattern was too strange to ignore. Then, out of nowhere, Tom received a package in the mail. Inside was a USB drive containing a grainy video. The footage was disturbing. Emily, sitting in a darkened room, her face pale and gaunt. She was visibly terrified, her voice trembling as she whispered, "I didn't do it. Please, you have to believe me. It wasn't me." The video raised more questions than it answered. Where was Emily? Who had recorded the footage? And what was she so desperate to deny? The police examined the video, but couldn't determine its origin or location. It was clear, however, that Emily had been alive at least several weeks after her disappearance, and she was terrified of something, or someone. The discoveries made it impossible to tell whether Emily was a victim, a fugitive, or something much darker. Every lead seemed to unravel into more confusion, and the case took on an almost surreal quality, leaving investigators grasping at shadows. The disappearance of Emily Bryant became one of the most chilling unsolved mysteries of recent years. But the haunting twists didn't end with her vanishing. Months passed, and the case grew colder, yet the fragments left behind painted a picture of a life spiraling into darkness, marked by secrets, threats, and a note that still taunts anyone who dares to look closer. It wasn't me. Investigators exhausted every lead, and theories ranged from abduction to Emily faking her disappearance, to even darker speculations involving murder, both committed by her or against her. But with no body, no suspect, and no definitive answers, the case became a web of questions, each more disturbing than the last. As we try to piece together what little we know, let's confront the evidence. The burner phone with its threatening texts, the cryptic video sent to Tom, and the eerie connections to Rachel Ellis's unsolved murder. Was Emily a victim, hunted by a shadow from her past, or was she the architect of her own nightmare? The USB video remains the most unsettling clue. Her gaunt face, the trembling whispers of "I didn't do it," still send chills down the spines of all who've seen it. But ask yourself this: what didn't she do? And why did she feel the need to leave such a desperate message? It's a phrase that lingers, forcing us to consider possibilities we may not want to. Now here's where it gets even darker. After the video, no more clues appeared, no more messages, no sightings, nothing. It's as though Emily Bryant ceased to exist. But then, a strange pattern began to emerge. In the years following her disappearance, several other women vanished under circumstances eerily similar to Emily's case. Remote locations, abandoned cars, and personal items left behind as if purposefully placed to bewilder. Could these disappearances be connected? If so, how? Was Emily one of many victims, or could she somehow be involved in these new cases? Her disappearance an elaborate cover for something more sinister. And here's the most terrifying thought of all. What if she's still out there? What if Emily Bryant, the woman everyone thought they knew, became someone or something unrecognizable? But let's pause here. What do you think? Could a person truly erase themselves so thoroughly and yet leave behind a trail of chaos? Or is it more likely that Emily met a tragic end, her secrets buried with her? Maybe she's still crying out for help, her words in that video a plea that we've all misinterpreted. Or maybe she was warning us. Think back to that note in her car. It wasn't me. Was it a denial of guilt, or was it pointing us towards someone else entirely? The truth is, we may never know. Emily Bryant's case reminds us of one chilling fact. Sometimes the answers don't come. Sometimes the darkness doesn't lift. But her story will keep us awake, questioning, wondering. So I ask you this: who was Emily Bryant? A victim, a fugitive, or a monster hiding in plain sight? The answers may lie somewhere out there, or perhaps they've been staring us in the face all along, and we're too afraid to see them.